Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the early morning first session for audio education. I'm Alex Ruthman, a professor of music education, music technology at NYU Steinhardt, just down the street. So welcome to AES and welcome to New York City. We're thrilled to have you. We're going to have a wonderful set of 3 papers this morning from Doug Bielmeier, from Samantha Bennett, and Carrie Hughes. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our first speaker, Doug Bielmeier. Welcome.
First of all, thank you everyone for coming, getting up quote unquote early to come, and first of all coming to the convention in general, supporting audio, and also for coming to the audio education panel. As you know, you're going to hear some great information about music technology, audio education, and some of the aspects of teaching it and learning. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hot mic. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss, and actually the research that I've been doing over, I would say, the past decade or so, has been focused on what's going on in audio education programs. And this can mean many different things. I know we have many different names. I'm sure in different countries we call it different things. Sometimes it's music technology, sometimes it's sound recording technology, audio engineering. So there's a lot of different terms, and what I'm specifically talking about today is sort of the area of music technology, which sort of encompasses all those things. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Dr. Doug Bielmeier. My doctorate is in education, and the focus of my research has been on not only audio engineering, but music technology, and dealing with how it should be taught or how it can be taught at the graduate and undergraduate level. My other research, I explore DIY circuit building as well as networked audio, so I'm going to make sure that I go to all the networked audio presentations today. My background is I have 15 years experience as a studio and lab sound engineer, staff engineer, and freelance engineer. I've worked in Nashville as well as in DC for many years. So what I want to sort of talk about today, my agenda is obviously for any good paper, there needs to be some type of problem, something that's looked at. So I'll be dealing with that. I want to talk a little bit about the prior research in this field, the purpose of doing this research, and then I want to explain to you the SSL survey. Don't get too excited, I'm not talking about solid state logic. I'm talking about student skills learned survey. So not as sexy of a topic, but I think you'll still find it interesting. Then we'll have a little bit of discussion of the research, and then I have some recommendations. All right, so how are music technology programs preparing students for careers in the industry? This has really been a question that I've asked again and again, and I've done several papers, even some published in the AES journal, but really focusing on, not the question or not making the statement that they're not preparing students, but sort of looking at and evaluating how we are doing what we're doing, and what are some of the most effective ways, or what are the things that are really working and what are really successful. I do a lot of time looking at really great programs, throughout America and throughout the world, that are doing great things, that have great students, that are having great achievements. I also notice, though, too, that there's several problems or sort of issues, and that's obviously that the industry is constantly changing. The fact that at one point I would burn dailies for artists or for clients, and now everything just goes right up to SoundCloud. I just bounce it right from Pro Tools into SoundCloud. So maybe they never hear a non-streaming version till the end, if the end is not a streaming version. And also, there's just so many different types of music technology programs out there. They're called different things. They have different focuses. And then also, the technology changes, and there's all these new emerging fields as well. So there has been very little research in this area. I'll skim over this quickly, but Basically, as early as the 1990s, in the late 70s, there was an AES convention or a special convention that focused on audio education in the late 70s. But really no sort of substantial academic research was done until the 90s. So basically a lot of this research, and it was limited to a couple dissertations and a few papers, really just focused on what skills students are lacking. And one of the big things that employers talked about is that there were weak customer skills, and that a lot of students really just lacked an understanding of what was going on day to day in the studio and in the environment. Now granted, when I say 1990, that's a very different studio environment than today. So even the research itself, has some limitations to it just because of how different the environment is today. So my prior research that I've done, I pulled employers, new hires, and educators to understand what skills music technology programs need to focus on. And this has been the majority of my research. A big sort of stream or sort of theme that I coded from all this information was the idea that there was this lack of communication skills and sort of the sort of soft skills, the interaction. So that's become sort of my my topic. So if you come up and talk to me at some point, I'll lead the conversation that way. We might talk about gear for about 2 minutes, and then I'll lead in. But how do you use it with a client, or how do you interact with the client? So for this research that I'm talking about today, I've already talked to employers, I've already talked to new hires and educators. So the next most logical person to ask was to go now and ask current students or students that recently graduated what skills they have and where they think they learned them. And specifically, the where is either during their matriculation or after they graduated. So the purpose of this is just to examine the myriad music technology programs and their relationship to industry. And this was the creation of the SSL survey, once again, not the board, of the Skills Students Learn survey, which polled students from the US and abroad and identifies skills they learned at music technology programs. So just to go through some of the methodology here, the collection process just utilized sort of a purposeful sampling method. Wow, we could really use a pop filter, huh? Students in Canada, United States, and Europe, they were contacted between June of 2015 and January of 2016. And for this particular study, there were 40 student respondents. The instrument I used is what I've been using so far in all my research is an online survey instrument. This seems to be a great way to get in touch with students and with people who just tend to be busy, especially with the employers. This was a great way when they're like, I have 5 minutes and I can do it on my iPad, and I really have no time for anything else. So, anyways, the main things I talked about, there was a consent form, there was basic info, but the big area of the survey instrument was the skills section. And that area not only had a modified Likert scale, which just means strongly agree, strongly disagree, but it also had an open-ended questions as well. So, great, and the skills that I took a look at were technology, communication, and personal skills. So I looked at those 3 areas. So for these students that took the survey, they answered either before or after where did they learn their technology, communication, and personal skills. Great, and for the data analysis, I know it's early already, and you might be fighting to stay awake, but there was both qualitative and quantitative methods. If you'd like to learn more about those, have at it. But basically the way I'm analyzing this data and the information you're going to see is descriptive statistics, as well as a structural coding method for the open-ended questions. All right, so now for the actual results, what actually happened. So it's interesting to point out that the sample itself was comprised of, let's see here, it says, So it was, a majority of the students were four-year engineering, technical, and communications programs. That's where they were from. The next largest group were four-year music colleges. So if you think about it, there is a distinction between, and it might not even be a BS or a BA when we talk about the actual degree that they're earning, but there's a distinction between taking an audio engineering or music technology program at an engineering or a communication school versus taking one that's housed at a music school. The fact that we don't have a lot of research that talks about that difference or talks about best practices in that is part of the reason why I'm sitting up here today talking to you, because that's something that we should look into more and we should be interested in. Be a great topic for a young student or any age student who is looking to do a dissertation in audio engineering related topics. So employment, students reported in, so the students that we were looking at who had been in the industry, who had recently graduated and were in the industry, the major area was staff and studio engineers, and then the next biggest area was live sound engineering. It is interesting to note that the game audio is increasing every year. So every year I do this research, I have more and more students that are in the area in the field of gaming audio. Great. So the first thing we ask students, are there music skills? So students reported before and after attending a music technology program what music skills they had. So if you can look at the table, it shows a couple things. One thing is that there's a significantly higher level of oral skills after their respective music technology programs than before. There wasn't a big difference between playing one or more instrument, and there was an insignificant difference between reading and writing music prior or after. So if you look at this graph, you can kind of see that the dark area shows the highest numbers and the greatest area of change. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe not back at the cheap seats. I don't think there are any cheap seats in this room. Okay, so one of the things about having optional clarification questions in sort of a mixed method study, so just not descriptive statistics, is the fact that you can get other information, other feedback from how people are commenting on these questions. So not only did they indicate what their proficiency level was, but then they were also able to talk about why they think their level was the way it was. And a lot of the students talked about just having a basic understanding and knowledge of music prior to coming to their music technology program. So that in general, the playing one or more instrument or reading, writing music didn't change that much because it wasn't focused on in the program and they learned the skills prior to even attending. Try to stop using P words or B's. There's a lot of priors in here though. So the next thing was technical skills. Wanted to look at what technical skills. Now the technical skills, if you look, there is a great difference between prior and after. So in general, these students are really focusing on, or really indicating that there was a significant difference in their ability to use entry-level professional recording equipment, studio microphone techniques, recording studio signal flow, record on current computers and programs. Can anyone guess why there would be could anyone make an inference why there would be a significant difference between this studio level equipment prior and then after college? Yeah?
Just the access to that equipment at the college.
Sure. Speaking of an SSL, not a lot of us have an SSL in our home. Actually, probably some people in the crowd do have an SSL in their home. But for most students, they're working with some type of DAW or, even just the audio output of their computer. So, this could be a little misleading in that, they just don't have access. Even the microphones, if you think about it, any kind of studio level microphones, they usually start around $1,000, which is usually a distance too far for some students, or most. One of the other things that we looked at were communication skills, and these are a little more subtle. And the table doesn't do a great of a job, but the explanation takes a look at that the students reported a significantly higher level of communication skills, so communicating clearly and tactful with clients, as well as the ability to be an effective listener. By the way, there was a 2009 study by Dr. David Tuff, really great research where he asked expert employers in the industry to indicate the top skills all new hires should have by the year, I think it was 2019, so it's coming up, so you better get on it. One of the, or I think that's in the top 5, if not one of the first 3, were communicating clearly and tactful with clients, as well as being an effective listener to clients and coworkers, an effective listener. The less significant difference that we saw in this research was the ability to be a lifelong learner and be able to work under the authority of a mentor. In the optional clarification section for this question, a lot of students mentioned that they already learned the ability to work under the authority of a mentor by actually just taking instrument lessons, private instructions. And they did point out that they thought their success as an engineer or their success in the field this far is their ability to communicate with clients. And ask for, them to pay their bill, the invoice. That's a skill. So personal skills, the 2 that we looked at were work hard and complete projects, and the other one was having a strong passion for audio recording. A little bit harder to quantify, and maybe a little bit harder for students to quantify. But we didn't really see a significant difference between working hard and completing projects. But there was a significantly higher level, according to the students, they reported a higher level of having a strong passion for audio recording. Which makes sense if you're around a lot of other great recording students and a lot of great teachers in a great program in a great studio. You may find a passion for audio recording or music technology. So there were open-ended questions. The open-ended questions focused on 3 things. They reported on skills focused on during their programs, skills not focused, and they just actually, had a little narrative or a little essay box where they could talk about their general level of preparedness to enter the audio industry, which is really kind of what we're getting at. Really, how prepared do they feel? I mean, that's part of the equation is how they feel. But we really like to see what skills they actually have. But, their perception of reality is important as well. Skills focused on in music technology programs, they really in general, using the structural coding method, the main theme came up that technical skills and technical aspects really dominated their programs. Which in prior research, when I talked to actually audio educators, when they talked about the focus of their programs, they did focus on a heavy bent towards technology. Some mentioned there was a very little focus on music, and few wanted a program to develop personal and communication skills. Some of them, there was different skills that were not, skills that were focused on. Some said they were musical. There were also some personal and communication skills. One of the areas that was kind of confusing is that when we asked them what skills were not focused on, the open-ended question suggested there was a lack of technical skills. So which one is it? Well, I think the great part of using a qualitative method or a structural coding method is that you can kind of get to the root of really what they're saying. So 49% of them said that the programs lacked technical skills, so almost half. However, they were talking about specific technical skills related to their current jobs. So that's live sound, mastering, mixing, game audio, video maintenance, and AV tech. So really, when they were talking about technical skills that were lacking, they were talking about the context, so specific ones, and the depth at which those skills were taught. So were they still learning about recording and microphone techniques? Of course. Or perhaps. But really what they were saying is the areas of focus and the depth that they wanted what was missing, or at least about 50% of them did. So with preparedness for work, I mean, you had negative responses as well as positive. Let's see here. Yeah, that's the other thing about open-ended comments. You have great comments like materials taught at program is found free on the internet. I mean, you can't buy that type of response. But as far as positives, they talked about it, just the fact of it being an extracurricular and having network opportunities as being an important part. Moving right along here, so in summary, the music skills, there was a significantly higher level of oral skills, where other music skills, we didn't see much of a change. In technical skills, there was a significantly higher level of ability to do all the major areas of manipulating studio level equipment, microphones, as well as studio signal flow and recording. Communication skills, they reported that they were significantly higher. And the personal skills either did not change or were higher as a result of their matriculation. And then as far as the results for skills focused on in music technology programs, technical skills, not much music, some communication. Not focused on were technical skills related to field, context, and depth that they were interested in. And then preparedness for work, most students commented on components of their education that were missing. So though many did say, you know, this was great, I enjoyed this experience, they were all not hesitant to comment on what they thought was missing. So I think the one thing that we should look at is the implication of the sample, in that there was a dramatic increase in the proficiency of oral skills, and I wonder if that's their definition of oral skills, meaning you could look at it two ways. Oral skills could be music, so solfege, sight reading, sight singing, or it could mean technical ear training. If you talk to Jason Corey et al. And his fabulous series of technical ear training modules, where students can learn to identify frequencies, as well as compression levels and reverb levels. So that's another. So that's not clear that if the sample made a distinction between the two. And in general, the students focused on the need for a greater focus on live sound skills. And then just navigating clients, coworkers, employers in the professional recording studio or professional environment. All right, well, let's see. So we're about out of time here. So let's see, do we have any questions about any of the data or anything else? Yes?
Can you comment on the certificate programs and what they typically consisted of? Did they come from a college or from a studio or mixed?
So this is going to be a cop-out, but that would be a wonderful research project paper to look at or analyze the curriculum or evaluate the curriculum of these certification programs and either compare them to four-year universities. You know, there was a great article in 2002 now, so that's eons ago. It was one actually presented right here at AES by Cash Jones, and she presented about the different reasons for attending and matriculating in different programs versus, you know, certification versus, you know, a four-year college, or even a more vocational type program. But that was in 2002, so it is now 2017, and a lot of those sort of programs that started as certification programs have really grown into these really sort of elaborate programs that actually almost mirror the content of some four-year programs. But I mean, even just, you know, that's a great question, because even what's the difference between a music technology program at a communication school versus at it housed in a music school? And what's the difference between the BS and the BA? And you may say the BS has science and technology in it, but currently I teach in a BS that does not have science and technology, and I did the sound recording technology program at the Hart School at the University of Hartford, and we took about 2 years of technology courses, as well as math in science. So, and that was a Bachelor of Arts. So I think as far as what programs are named, what they're named, first of all, right, because there's so many different names, and then what their curriculum is based on their degree, I think there's a wide variance in that as well. So all of those would be fantastic research projects. So, thank you. Yep.
How do you implement the non-technical people skills portion of it that the students seem to want?
Well, that's great. And, I did a similar paper on music proficiency. So how do we encourage music proficiency in audio engineering and just music technology? How do we teach that? How do they learn that? And, some of the best practice, I looked at best practices in doing so. And one of the things countless educators said over and over again is really integrating them within projects and within courses. So if you have a rubric for a project, it's a recording project, maybe do a 3-piece band, okay? People are still recording bands anymore. But a 3-piece band, and they have to record it, well, maybe in that rubric, there's a section in there that focuses on their ability to communicate with the client. John Merchant, who's speaking here at AES, he has a great paper where he talks about teaching mixing to students and the importance of the feedback loop. So in other words, he becomes the client then. And the students don't receive their final grade until he's gone and given them feedback on their project, and they have to make changes. He actually does, I think, three iterations. So they do a project, he gives them feedback, they have to do it again, and they don't ever receive that final grade until they've done all the iterations. So, but that's his, he's a great mixing engineer and, a great educator, so that's his approach to kind of incorporate.
That's a really good idea.
Yep, it is. Yeah, well, it's in a paper, so yeah, go for it. I think it was at one of these conferences a few years ago. So, great guy. I think he's speaking about the BGs because he recorded with them.
Did you do it by email? Because that's the new norm, really, essentially.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the other thing then too. Do you do it as an email in sort of a blind type of way that they're actually talking to a client, or are they talking to you as a teacher, or are you the client? And how is it, how authentic, how situated do you want to make it, the situation? I one time pretended I was a blues singer called Muddy Brothers, and I would send emails to the students, and I would not use any engineering technology. It was all, I was a musician. And so I'd ask for things to be brighter, or fuller, or warmer. I would not say boost, 4K, by 12 dB. I would never say that anyways, but that was the idea, is that it would be more situated